Perry, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey podcast today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
This will be a blast. Can you give myself and the audience a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Sure. And I'll give the quick version. My name is Perry Carpenter. I'm a technology professional specializing in cybersecurity. Have kind of lived at the intersection of technology and the human condition for the past 20 years. And so what that means is that I focus on like why people do the things that they do, think the things that they think, and how technology either helps or hurts that.
That's a nice, simple explanation.
Right.
How did you get into the field? You're like me, that at the age that we were going through school, these fields didn't really exist. So
Yeah.
what was kind of that road that you got to where you're at now?
God. Yeah, this field did not exist. So I was a philosophy major in college and a biblical languages major, and I had no idea like how to get a job after you get degrees like that. So I started to go into law school. Realized I would hate being a lawyer for the rest of my life. And I kind of dumped out after year two and tried to reevaluate. It's like, what would I really be interested in? And I'd always loved computers. I'd kind of grown up as the field of computers started to grow as well. And even in law school, there was this, nascent field of computer law and cybercrime law, and people were trying to figure it out. And I was really interested in that. But I'd much more enjoy tinkering with the machines than dealing with the legal aspects of it in that way. And so I started a master's degree in computer science. As part of that, I also needed money, so I went for an internship. Ended up getting hired in the R&D group doing computer development for a company called JB Hunt.
Hmm.
And in the middle of that, they just said, "Hey, we'll hire you and pay you what you would be paid if you had your degree." And so ended up doing that. Was at the kind of the forefront of a lot of things. Me and a small team developed the satellite email program that trucks would use to send email back and forth back
Hmm.
before year 2000. Did some automated routing and stuff like that. Got hired by Walmart after that to write the email system that they used in their stores and clubs for several years. And then that was a gateway to security for me. When you back in that day, at least, when you worked on security, you also had to work on groups, which means you had to work on security groups, which means that you were into directory structures and security permissions and everything else. And that was a deep dive into security. A few years after that, I really realized that regardless of how much people say, spend, or do on security related issues, there's always this factor that's hard to control
Yeah.
and hard to account for, and that's the people side of things. And so that really started my journey into understanding why people do the things they do and think the things that they think, and why even when we're trained and fully believe that we'll never do X in any part of our life, or we will always do Y in any part of our life, why we can kind of go past those boundaries that we think really exist, and how we can get pulled in directions that we don't really believe we can be pulled into.
So speaking of that, of uh, with the experiences that we have and knowing what we know, how have you been pulled into kind of doing something that you didn't want to do? So, like, I talked to my
Yeah.
guests in cybersecurity and counter fraud, counter scam, that if you and I can't get it right 100% of the time, should the general public feel like, oh my gosh, like it's hopeless for me? And I know that's
Hmm.
not the case. But also, they need to hear stories about you and I getting it wrong to
Right.
destigmatize the public when they get it wrong. They shouldn't feel
Yeah.
ashamed. They shouldn't feel embarrassed. So, has that happened to you?
So I'll give a couple examples, and one is non-security, non-fraud, non-anything, and then I'll give a security example. So one of the things that I've always been interested in since as far as I can remember was just the field of what I'll call professional deception. And
Hmm.
by that, I'm speaking about magicians and people that do sleight of hand and misdirection. And so the very fact of the matter is that all of us have felt our attention pulled by a really good magician
Yeah.
or somebody that understands misdirection, to where you can take, a coin, seemingly put it in one hand, and just by the, body language and everything else, you really believe that that coin is in a hand that they never put it in. And so we all, just based on the way our minds work, we get pulled in directions that where we think we can suss something out.
Hmm.
And biology and psychology would say differently. So, so I think that that is a part of it. And then you take that and you bring it into a field like cybersecurity or fraud, and we see it over and over and over again. It's the same patterns. It is taking advantage of human nature and the way that our minds work at its core. And so, one example that I'll give is early on at the company that I work for, which is a cybersecurity training company. And as part of that, we specialize in sending these simulated phishing emails out. I had worked at the company maybe a week when I fell for my first one. And I'm somebody that specializes in this. I had somebody that measured the entire market for this kind of software and had received probably hundreds of these before. But the thing that got me in this company was the randomness of it.
Hmm.
It just hit right. I was in my car. I was waiting for a DocuSign that should have been coming to me to sign to get part of my compensation signed off on. So I was expecting this thing like with bated breath. I needed to sign it. The same day, they send out a phishing email that is a simulated DocuSign for HR benefits to everybody in the company. And so for me, it just landed right person, right place, right time.
Yeah.
I justified it in my mind. I was on a mobile device. I was not on my regular computer where I have all these good habits about hovering over links and looking at senders. And so I'm expecting it. I'm on a device that will make that falling for that way easier. And I just click on it. And then boom, I find out I was wrong. Um, Same thing, similar thing happened. I was at a conference. I'm in a line. I'm distracted. I had received a phone call a few minutes earlier because I'm one of these people, I get calls all the time. And then I get an email that says you missed a call, and we have this voice over IP systems, and so when you get a voicemail, it sends you an email to
Yeah.
let you know. I'd gotten an email that said your voice message is waiting for you, and I basically clicked on it and fell for another one. Again, right person, right place, right time type of situation. So just the randomness of the way that things would fall, and my own distraction, and the fact that I had not built good habits on that mobile device yet
Hmm.
were the thing that got me multiple times. Now I have a completely different habit set, and it's been over 7 years at this point, and I've not clicked on any of those. And trust me, at our company, we get multiple of those per week now. So not falling for those in over 7 years is it's a good thing. It also probably means I'm
Due for another distraction.
due for another distraction, a thing where I've not built the right habit yet, or I'm just in the wrong frame of mind, and everything falls together at in the wrong way for me.
So what was the habit that you built on your mobile phone that has allowed you to be successful in in that respect?
Yeah. So if I get a notification for anything in email that I cannot directly verify on the mobile device without clicking on the thing,
Hmm.
then I'm not going to click on it. I'm going to wait the couple hours till I can be in front of a computer and properly look at it. The other thing is if I get a notification that is related to a service that I also have an app for, or a website for, something like that, I'm not going to click on the notification. I'll open the app and
Yeah.
see if that notification is there. Or if I can just log into a website that would tell me that, I'm going to do it that way. So take out the convenience factor of clicking on the link within the email in order to save myself a little bit of hardship if that thing is not legit.
So for example, for the voicemail notification, you'd go to the VoIP app, click on
Yeah,
that, check your voicemail there, and go, oh, there's a voicemail there, there isn't one,
exactly. Yeah,
as
we had
opposed
a
to, yeah.
we had a voice system at the time called Ring Central,
Hmm.
and so there was a Ring Central app on my phone. I would, open that instead and look to see if there's a voicemail there.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with all those mechanisms, as well as all
Hmm.
the voicemail systems that I don't have.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the great things is that when you get a notification for let's say you use Gmail as your primary system, and you get a notification from Office 365 saying that you've got something. It's like, oh, okay, there's a red flag there. I don't have access to Office 365. I don't touch Office 365. I have negative feelings about Office 365. All of those things can you let you know that that's probably not real, and I can take a look at that a little bit deeper later on.
It's and you can almost be dismissive of it, but when it's your email platform telling you something in a format that you're
It's a
used to,
implicit trust. Yeah,
oh
there's a
yeah, I'm
lot
sure
of
it's just
implicit
another one of
trust.
those.
And the other thing is, we've been conditioned in a lot of ways to kind of take that easy way out of just clicking something. It's basic behavior science is all of the platforms, all of the apps, everything else want to make the behavior that they're trying to encourage the easiest thing that
Yeah.
they can do, which is a notification or a link that you can click on that sends you something. And so cyber criminals and scammers also want to incent the behavior that they're hoping for in the way that is easiest for you to do because our minds are naturally a little bit lazy and we fall into habits very, very easily.
I've talked with a number of other guests about this, you know, from a business perspective, your business, my business, we try to introduce the least amount of friction in a process, make it
Exactly.
as easy, if it's Ring Central, as easy it is possible for you to get your voicemails. If it's your bank, as easy as you can to send
Hmm.
money, because we don't want to make life difficult for our customers because they're going to switch and go to a different company if we make
Yeah.
things difficult. That it seems like they were almost at a stage in cybersecurity and scams that we need to introduce friction into the process.
Yeah, you use the word that I use in that too. And I remember back when I was an analyst at Gartner and I would be consulting with people about one of the areas I focused on a lot was this field called identity management, which is authentication, authorization.
Mhm.
How do you prove who you are, and then also how do you prove that you should be doing the thing that you are trying to do? And in some environments, you want as little friction as possible. You want it to feel almost automatic for
Yeah,
the person, especially in areas where there's not a lot of risk. In some areas where there's risk and the person understands and appreciates the risk, then you almost have permission to introduce friction to the point where if there's no friction there, people don't feel safe.
yeah,
Almost, like if you get in your car and you don't have the seatbelt on, you probably feel a little bit incomplete, a little bit naked at this point. Um, and I think that there are certain environments like your online banking now, if you don't feel a little bit of friction, just the right amount, you have to dial that up as
yeah.
somebody who's managing the app. How do I make somebody feel just the right amount of friction where they're going to feel safe and secure and they're going to do the thing I need to do and also not bail out on the service because it's too much friction?
Yeah, if I'm wiring money to somebody, I still want to be able to send the wire, but I kind of also want to know that my bank is like got
Exactly.
my back and saying, do you want to send a test transaction first?
Right. Yeah. Are you really sure you want to send this to an account number you're not verified and
You
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 probably can't call back those funds?
you've never sent money to this account before. Are you sure you want to do this?
Hmm.
Which is a good thing to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like right sizing your friction is a big deal as somebody who's building those experiences for people.
So has this kind of over the last let's say 10 years, this interest in deception kind of welled up at anything interesting in your life?
I mean, the most interesting thing is, and I always have an interest in like the misdirection side of things and the social engineering side of things. And, one of my good friends before he passed away was a fairly well-known hacker by the name of Kevin Mitnick.
Hmm.
And we shared a lot of the same interests. He grew up fascinated with magic as well. He had taken some dark turns early in his life that let that curiosity and that fascination with deception kind of lead him to a dark place.
Yeah.
He ultimately was arrested and then finally released and tried to make a good life after that. So the social engineering side really is kind of the misdirection, but it's built just around the way the human mind works. And then I think when you take misdirection or deception in the way the mind works, and then you infuse that with technology trends, I mean, we're now squarely in the space where technology-based deception is, I think, more available to anybody than at any time in history. And the specific thing I'm thinking about right now is like generative artificial
Yeah.
intelligence fueling all of that from deep fakes of videos to voices to text, image, and everything else. Um, it's all the same deceptive principles. It's just the scale and the ease
Yeah.
of the ability to create these things is like unprecedented at this point.
Yeah, I think it used to be when I first started the podcast, I was perfectly comfortable giving people the advice of unless you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or you're a
Yeah.
high level government official, if you get a video chat with someone, that's good enough to at least confirm that you are video chatting with somebody, and it's not. You can make your decision of whether this person is really who they claim
Right.
to be. That's a different issue. But yeah, you're actually video chatting with somebody. I don't feel comfortable giving that advice to people anymore. It just seems that the technology has gotten so easy for someone to alter their voice, alter their
Right.
appearance in real time that that's just not a it's not a good
Yeah.
it's not safe advice anymore.
No, it's not. And a lot of the advice and the tendencies, again, if we're talking about human nature, one of the things that people really want is kind of encouragement, and they want to feel like there's an easy way to detect something.
Yeah.
And we as security people are constantly we're pushed into advice mode.
Yeah.
And somebody says, "Well, like, how can I tell if something's a deep fake?" And I really like your tact on this right now, which is um, not necessarily giving them that easy way
Yeah.
out. Not saying, "Hey, if you can talk to somebody on video, it's great," because um, one of the things that I see over and over and over is somebody will present on something like a deep fake, and then you'll see this little slide about things like, well, if it's a deep fake image or video, try to look at the fingers, try to look at the hair, look at
Yeah.
text in the background, and see if things don't look right. Um, right now, that's only going to help you detect the really bad ones, but and even if it's the really bad ones, what does bad look like 6 months from now? Those things are going to be taken away. Or what if somebody just has a little bit more patience and they roll that generation 3 or 4 more times and they get one that doesn't have those tells. So I don't give people the easy way out on that because the easy way out's not going to exist. Instead, I've shifted and I say, the fact of whether it is quote unquote real or not is kind of secondary. The
Mhm.
the big question I ask is why does this thing exist and why is it in front of me? And what story is it trying to tell? What emotions is it trying to evoke? And what actions or beliefs is it trying to push me to take or to do?
But isn't that the isn't that kind of the we'll dive into psychology. Isn't that a bit of the
Yeah.
challenge is that when we're in this space, we may already very well have been shoved past where we can cognitively make those
hmm
assessments?
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest things. And so the first thing it almost comes back down to your basic phishing training again, right? Or social engineering training. We always tell people the the biggest thing that you can do to get an upper hand on these things is just to stop and take a
Yeah.
breath. And I think with deep fakes and all the AI generated deception that's out there, we're going to have to cultivate that to the nth degree because Studies are showing that even people that believe that they can tell if something's fake or
Hmm.
not, they're only right about a quarter or less of the time.
Oh, that's not good.
21.3% was the number that seems to be coming to my mind from a study last year. And so we're way past the crossover point where most people can tell what's real or not. And the problem is that in a news story about deep fakes or in a presentation about deep fakes, people feel like they have superpowers
Yeah.
because they'll make up tells in their own mind, or somebody will show them that easy one. But when it's like one out of 100 things in your social media feed or your inbox or your Zoom call calendar, well,
Yeah.
then you're operating in a completely different mental frame where everything is real. And then that thing that comes to you, your assumption isn't that it's fake. Your
Yeah.
assumption is that it's real. And so we have to cultivate this kind of pleasant skepticism, where it's not taking you down and not making you depressed, but just
Hmm.
to where you're like, before I do anything, before I react emotionally to this thing, I need to introspect just a little bit and then start to again ask, what story is this trying to tell? What am I feeling? What does it want me to feel? And what's it hoping that I do?
Kind of training yourself before you even get down the
Yeah.
road on those things.
Yeah. Or if you feel yourself kind of revving up, then go, why am I doing this? So it's almost you can still have that secondary thing once you're kind of in the middle of about to do something, or you're starting to
Hmm.
feel that emotion well up to go, why is that? And then now let me slow down a little bit. And we know people can do this because people throughout history have been trained to kind of recognize and then learn to put how their emotions or their actions in check before they've gone too far on
Yeah.
things.
It was interesting. So this morning I got an email, someone's an email, basically a woman saying, "Hey, can you help me figure out whether this person is who they claim they are?
Hmm.
I've been chatting with this guy online, and he's a general. He's a general in the U.S. Army." And, and
Sounds like a romance scam.
and and my very first thing goes, "Oh yeah, yeah. That's all you need to say. It's fake. Like clearly to me, it's a scam."
Right.
And he's just about to, and he's currently been in Syria, and I'm like, oh, okay, absolutely
And he
fake.
needs you to wire money so that he can
Oh,
get on a plane out of, yeah.
it gets better. It's he's about to retire back to Los Angeles next week, and I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. But he was just kidnapped by the Syrian army, and
Yeah.
they're trying to get me to pay his ransom. And I'm like, for me being objective on the outside, it's easy to see, well, you know, every sentence is clear to me that this whole thing is fake. But I always
Yeah.
wonder, like, what she had said is like, I have been talking with this person for, I think it was over 6 months. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so how subtle has the creep, not the creepy as in the weird creep, but the
Right.
scope creep is how
Yeah.
this person has so subtly been maneuvered to the point where your summary, it's obvious that it's it's a scam, but that you've been so subtly moved through this process
Yeah.
over the course of months, and you've built that trust that you can't that you aren't able to see now that
That's
it's that.
heartbreaking.
And it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking,
And
and
it
hopefully she
is,
won't send him any money, but
I mean, for people like us that sit on the outside and hear these all day, it's just immediate red flags. But you're right. For somebody that does not live in the world that we live in, and they just get that random message, and maybe they're at a dark, sad,
yeah.
lonely point in their life, and that is the lifeline of hope that they've been kind of wishing for, praying for. Man, it takes a special kind of person to
Perpetrate
you
that,
know
yeah.
to perpetrate that.
But like the process of the psychology of that is interesting to me. Like from the
Yeah,
outside, but in the same way, you clicked on a phishing link because it seemed appropriately in the
Yep.
context at the moment. There was enough context that your mind
Yeah.
decided to irresponsibly build for you.
Hmm.
Hey, I'm expecting something from HR, so obviously this is it. I
Yeah.
expect a voicemail notification from Ring Central. This is obviously it.
Hmm.
I think I've told this story on the podcast before. Someone claiming to represent an advertising network contacted me a number of years ago. Hey, we want to integrate with your platform, and here's the rates that we pay. Seemed perfectly reasonable. Got through there are no obvious red flags, and got to the
Yeah.
point where I was supposed to get paid, and lo and behold, they weren't really who they claimed to be. They weren't
Man.
working for that company, but there was enough truth throughout the process, and it was not so divergent from what reality would be that it just, my
Yeah.
regular due diligence checks was like, yeah, it's a legitimate company. I know who they are. Da 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 da. And it's like,
Man.
gosh darn it.
Yeah, man, that is rough. And I think that the biggest thing as security professionals that we have to do is we have to be honest with ourselves and with everybody around us that everybody is vulnerable.
Yeah,
Just because we live in this space doesn't and are quote unquote experts in this stuff doesn't mean that we can't get got.
yeah,
The right pretext, the right scam, the right story at any time, at any given time can get somebody,
yeah,
even us. And that is it's a really humbling thing to remember. But I also think that we don't win any converts into the security field or to the mindset of security by holding ourselves out and saying that we're, these impenetrable
yeah.
castles.
And I think the not false positive, the real positives that we see in terms of we get an email and it's, hey, I'm a Nigerian prince. I've got,
Yeah.
I know that you're a good person. I want to send you $100 million. I think that in our minds we build up these. Well, that's what all scams look like.
Mm,
They're so over the top that, oh, I can easily spot them, and we get a kind of a
yeah.
false sense of security, pardon the pun, that, oh, it's easy to identify these things. But in the
Hmm.
moment, we clearly both, you and I have had experiences where in the moment it wasn't obviously outside of our
Right.
what we were expecting to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, the big thing is that our minds and I guess just, humans in general, we thrive on story.
Hmm.
And so if anything fits within a narrative that we would understand or expect, or would even hope for
Yeah,
in some way, then the person on the other side of that scam is already halfway there.
yeah. I mean, that's the way I see it with the meeting the general online is that
Yeah.
it's we've seen so many stories in movies and in books of these things happening, and
Hmm.
we want in not in a weird way we want this to be true, but
Oh yeah.
there's some part in our heart and our mind that it's that hey, this is now my time to have this story
Hmm.
because we've been told through books and movies, well, this is just what happens. This is
Yeah.
normal.
Well, and the same thing on one hand it could be relationships, on another hand it could be like a financial windfall.
Yep.
So maybe it is that maybe an evolution of the Nigerian prince scam where you're like, oh, man, I can't even figure out how I'm going to pay my rent next month or buy groceries for my family. And then all of a sudden this email or text comes through and there's just enough hope and enough
Yeah.
a seed of credibility with it for something that snaps into a narrative that you would understand, that you pull on it a little bit and you don't get immediately turned off. And then you
Yeah.
go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, and the story becomes more and more credible until all of a sudden you don't realize that, or all of a sudden, kind of at the middle or the tail end of it, you realize it's not like a story of hope or anything
Yeah.
else. It's a tragedy that you're involved in.
And I'm starting to see more and more kind of the pig butchering crypto scams where
Yeah,
you send them money or crypto, but then they actually, in reality, send you money back. At some
just
point,
enough.
just
Yeah,
enough for you to go, oh, it is legitimate because I was able to, like, your mind doesn't say, well, you sent them $10,000, they only sent 1,000 back, they still got 90% of the deal here. In
hmm
your mind, it's like, okay, that tampons down the spot of our brain that says this is a scam because, well, if it was a scam, they
yeah,
wouldn't have sent me any money back.
yeah. Well, and yeah, because it doesn't exist. Again, if we're all kind of functioning based on story and narratives, it
Yeah.
doesn't fit the narrative that we believe exists.
Yeah,
And
you
yeah,
and
at
I
that
get on a
point, it's
podcast and say
crazy.
the narrative, the scammer's never going to send you any money back. So if you ask for your money back and the scammer and you don't get any money back, well, then you know it's a scam. Well, now that they give you
hmm
money back, you and I have now just been in, what we have
Yeah,
said now supports, this other person's claim of truth.
yeah. And I think that the biggest downfall of any profession, especially those of us that get on microphones or in front of cameras and give advice, is that we do it without nuance.
Yeah.
We tend to be very binary in the yes, this is right, yes, this is wrong, this is the way it always happens. And in reality, so many things within every aspect of life are, go across this wide spectrum. And people are comforted by black and white, right and
Yeah.
wrong, all of that. They're very they're very they have a hard time embracing the uncertainty that comes with the shades of gray and all those different areas. But at the same time, if we can give examples of these times where it's not necessarily been you ask for your money and they could just go, no, I've got you, and then
Yeah.
they laugh at you and run away.
Yeah.
But no, they give you a little bit of your money back to keep you on the line for a little bit longer because that increases your hope.
Yeah. Do you see this getting worse as technology evolves or getting better, or it's going to be this constant kind of ebb and flow of who has the upper hand?
Yeah, I think that there's the arms race aspect that you allude to with this. So, in the same way that we're talking about the nuance or the different ways that scammers will, maybe give it a little bit of money back or keep you on the line a little bit longer, um, that means that we're participating in our side of the arms race by giving the right amount of information.
Yeah.
Other people participate in the arms race by making the tools for detection and response a little bit better. At the same time, because it's an arms race, we level up our side of the playing field, and then the other people, because there's always a financial interest or power dynamic interest, they're going to level up their side, and potentially because they're so motivated, and because there's so many of them out there that are motivated, they're going to come at us from an angle that we haven't prepared ourselves or anybody else for.
So that leads to the question, what the heck do we do?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so again, I'm a little bit against easy answers on
What's
these things.
what's the complex answer?
The most complex answer that I think we can still digest is that we have to have, again, without getting depressed, we have to have a healthy skepticism of the information environment that we live in.
Hmm.
And that skepticism needs to come with the fact that we're always being sold stories. And so whether that's a deep fake that gets in front of you or a piece of disinformation that lands in front of you, or maybe somebody giving you legit
Hmm.
information, at all times you need to go, how do I know that's true? If I now live in an information environment where fiction passes for true over 75% of the time, what questions do I need to ask myself anytime this thing might lead me to make a critical decision or
Hmm.
to believe something a certain way? And if I can start to understand the fact that my mind works on story, and I'm driven by emotion, and that every scammer, hacker, influence artist that's out there is either after money or minds, well, then now I can start to go, what's the story there? What is it trying to make me feel? Are the sources credible? Is the story verifiable? Uh, what is it wanting me to do or believe? And then once I can start to play with those kinds of questions in my own mind, then I can say that no matter what I do, I'm doing it in a more informed way
Yeah.
and in a way that's not just base level brainstem reflex.
Kind of like asking ourselves if this goes awry, what are the consequences to me?
Exactly. Yeah. Let me pre-think through the situation downstream a little bit. And there's very few things in life where we pay a price for slowing down and asking some critical questions.
Yeah. Well,
There's a lot of
well,
things
people
where
would like to tell you otherwise, but
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, your used car salesman, your broker, your whatever, it's going to be you have to jump on this now or you're going to lose. But
yeah,
you also have to realize that's an influence tactic.
yeah, yeah. Uh, It's funny when you're thinking of storytelling and narrative. Uh, I think of like real world legitimate examples. I think Subaru.
Yeah.
That they do such a good job of there's a dog in every commercial.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen a Subaru commercial where they've talked about the 0 to 60 speed of the car, or they've
Hmm.
talked about the active suspension, but it's lifestyle, it's
Yes.
safety, it's
They're selling you the vision of the life that
experience.
you want. Yeah.
Yes. And so it makes me like it. I think the more I've done the podcast, I start to see these things more of like, okay, they're not really telling me about the product.
Hmm.
They're trying to get me to they're trying to connect with me on an emotional level. That's something I've got to. That's
Right.
that's one of the things that I always tell. Like, it's if you're feeling emotional about something, that's a. But
Hmm.
they do it slow enough you don't feel an emotion about it in the moment. But
Yeah. They're trying to hack your mind very subtly. The if you want to see the best and worst examples of that, any year, just turn into the Super Bowl
yeah,
and look at the Super Bowl commercials because you will see the very, very best examples of that. And then you'll also see people with a lot of budget, but not a lot of good planning skills or understanding behind it. And I think it would be fun, like, for families that are out there to kind of make that a family activity one night. Is just say, I'm going to look up 10 different Super Bowl commercials and I'm going to analyze what is the product, what's the narrative, what are they trying to make me feel, what are they, you already understand the do. The do
yeah.
is they want you to buy, or to give you to give their brand a higher place in your mind, so that the third, fourth, fifth time that you hear about it, that you're likely to buy. But starting to say, here are the things that work from within my own mind.
Hmm.
Here are the things that I see people trying that don't work. That's also pretty interesting.
I suppose it's also a value that of understanding that what works for you and motivates you to go down a path is not the same thing that
Right.
motivates me. That
Yeah.
we're kind of joking about the email of hey, it's a U.S. Army general reaching out. Like that's not a motivation for me, but that is a motivation for somebody else. And
Yeah.
just because I can see it there doesn't mean it. I mean, clearly, fake advertiser, because it hit me
Hmm.
where what was valuable and important to me in that moment was the advertiser,
Right.
the the
Right.
pig butchering scam of someone offering me $50 million. That doesn't work for me, but having to work for my money, that does work for me.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And I think the sooner we realize that the narratives or the tells or whatever that work or will give something away for us are not ubiquitous.
Yeah.
They're not the same things that somebody else would fall for, or the things that they might that might raise a red flag for them. the better we are. If we're people that are giving advice or trying to help other people in this space, the last thing that we can do is make it like this big monolith and say, this is what will always
Yeah.
be, and here's what you should always look for. It is to recognize that people are complex and scammers are also people. And so they're very complex as well.
And they pivot when, you and I
Right.
say, hey, on a deep fake video, look for the ear. Okay, we
Yeah.
need to we need to tune our software better so that the ears look better. When we
Hmm.
say, watch out for someone who says I've got $10 million. Okay, well, what about $1,000?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that that is the most critical thing that we can do. And that's the most critical thing that people need to realize. Like if they're just living their life and they're out there, and something is tickling their emotions, it's not necessarily about the tell that is in the piece of media
Hmm.
or the email that you're getting. It is about what's happening internally to yourself. It is, I'm feeling an inordinate amount of hope about this. Or, the fact that a general is speaking to me, that appeals to a certain part of me. Maybe there's a high appreciation for authority, a high
Yeah.
appreciation for status, an intrinsic hope to be rescued from the situation that I'm in, where I may be running out of money or, lonely or something like that. And so once we start to realize that, then we can go, well, how might somebody misuse that thing that I'm feeling against me?
Hmm.
And how might they weaponize that in different ways? And I think that makes us ask a lot of different questions about, like, what's possible with deep fakes, but also what's possible with what we would call cheap fakes, which is just, taking something that's legit and then editing it or taking it out of context or
Yeah.
positioning it, or something that they just may fabricate and make up that has no technology behind it. It's just story.
That would never happen.
Yeah, and again, so for me, it's always coming back to you right now. I don't care if the thing is fake or not. I care about what is wanting somebody to believe or to do.
And why am I responding this way to this opportunity,
Exactly.
or why am I responding to this way to this piece of news or this interaction or this
Or this
situation?
photo or anything. Yeah,
Oh gosh, it's all introspection.
it is. It is. And I think as a society, we've kind of gotten to the point where we don't like to introspect. Instead, we just like to doom scroll,
Yeah.
or we like to project rather than introspect. And whenever we're doing that, we're probably in the most vulnerable spot we can be. It's not lost on me that at the same time that I'm saying all this, there's another movement around that typically, I think we can discredit because it gets a little bit woo-woo every now and then. But the whole mindfulness movement,
Hmm.
there's something there's something to it around the introspection part. The being aware of what's going on in your own body and mind, I think is important. So I think you can take all the spiritual stuff out of that, and you can say instead, how can I, as a person living on the earth where I know that my emotions and everything else can be hijacked very easily, how can I introspect in the right way and be aware of what I'm thinking and feeling, more in the moment rather than in a reactive way?
Hmm.
And so, taking whatever techniques from that movement and applying that to cybersecurity could be pretty important. And we might even be able to talk about, like, adopting a zero trust mindset or having situational cognitive awareness around things. It doesn't have to be quote unquote mindfulness, but
Yeah.
it's taking the thing that some people are figuring out and bringing it into a domain, where it could also be useful.
Ooh, that's exciting. I look forward to seeing a book on that in a year after our
Right.
conversation here.
Right. I do. I have a colleague that's doing a lot of research in that area. Her name is Anna Collard, and she's doing a lot of work in kind of bridging those disciplines and taking the practices and the mindsets from the mindfulness space and bringing the appropriate bits of that into other areas of life.
Interesting. So how does all of this kind of gel with your book Fake? So if we
Yeah.
said that we're not creating a to-do list or we're not creating a watch out for this list, how does that
hmm
square with your book?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So again, I shied away from giving easy answers in the
Hmm.
book, and instead gave frameworks and modes of thought. So the very first chapter or few chapters, 3 chapters of the book are just around like what really is AI and how does it work? Because there's a lot of people talking about it right now with without a lot of information. And so I want to give people the right footing to have intelligent conversations about the topic of the day
Hmm.
in a way that gets them credibility rather than somebody go, oh, you used the word wrong, or you're talking
Yeah.
about a different kind of AI or something like that. So the first few chapters are a grounding in that and a grounding in what are the fundamentals of deception? How are our minds hacked and how have they been hacked for thousands of years? And then it bridges into the fact that humans adapt very slowly. Technology is advancing very
Yeah.
rapidly. And that creates this weird area that I call the exploitation zone, which is that gap between adaptability and where technology is taking us very rapidly. And so, in that exploitation zone, I think the first thing to realize is that all of us are there
Yeah.
to, in some form or fashion, even those of us who are technologists by trade or focus on AI by trade, we don't know everything that's going on, and we can be surprised by something.
Yeah.
And anytime we can be surprised by something, somebody could take advantage of our ignorance or our complacence or our overconfidence. And so realizing that we're there then means that we have to be able to forecast out in the future into the things that are possible and the ways that AI and technology and algorithmic enforcement on social media platforms and distribution networks that are out there and all that, how they can be exploited to weaponize those bits of
Hmm.
disinformation and mindsets that have always existed in human nature. And so there's a lot that explores all the different facets of that. And then the very last 3 chapters of the book are extremely practical. They're games that families can play. They're mindsets that I try to push you into
Hmm.
in different ways, really, so that you can even say like something as simple as kind of embracing your evil side for a minute and saying, if I wanted to create a piece of disinformation, how would I do that?
Yeah.
How would I frame the narrative? Who would I target with that? How would I inject the right emotion in that? So I actually walk people through that in in some very fun ways, because as soon as you've kind of gone through those processes, all of a sudden you start to view the world a little bit differently, or you view the information in front of you a little bit differently.
You start to see, oh, how could that might be manipulated in some way because that's how I
Yes.
would have manipulated
Yeah, exactly.
it.
That's how I would try to make me mad if or feel afraid or to click a button really fast because I've actually gone through that process and so developing a kind of a fun, jovial, adversarial mindset, I think is key.
I love it. Perry, if people want to find you online, where can they find you?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. So you can just look up Perry Carpenter on LinkedIn. I'm probably going to be the first one that shows up. Um, Way less active on Twitter these days,
Hmm.
or X or whatever we're calling it, but am still there, and still monitor the AI community.
Hmm.
There's still some good thriving communities on X. And then the website for the book is This Book is Fake, and fake is spelled FAIK because there's AI in the
Yeah.
middle of it. And so if you want to go to the thisbookisfake.com, you can get more information there.
Awesome. Perry, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.